Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this segment of Khoj Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. The recitation is Manj Mahalla Panjwa. Dukh Tadey ja Visar Javey, Bukh Vyape Bahu Viditave, Simrat Naam Sada Suhela, Jis Deve Deen Dayala Jiyo. Satgur mera vad samaratha, ji samali ta sab dukh latha. Chinta rog gayi khau pida, aap kare pritpala jiyo. Barik wangi hau sab kich manga, dende tot nahi prabaranga. Peri pe bahut manai, deen dayal gopala jiyo. हाउ बलिहारे सतगुर पूरे जिन बंधन काटे सगले मेरे हृदय नाम दे निर्मल किए नानक रंग रसाला जियो. Let's take the passage from the top, section by section. Dukh Tadey ja Visar Javey, Bukh Vyape Bahu Viditave, Simrat Naam Sada Suhela Jis Deve Deen Dayala Jiyo. That's the crux of this section. Simrat Naam Sada Suhela Jis Deve Deen Dayala Jiyo. To those who have received the gift of self-knowledge, Naam, self-knowledge. To them every moment is comforting and pleasant. Sada Suhela. And then Dukh Tadey ja Visar Javey. That is to say, grief and sorrow are outcomes of a lack of self-awareness. When we do not have self-knowledge, Naam, and we lack awareness of the self, in other words, when we are caught up in Haume, then grief and sorrow meets us at every step. And these afflictions and cravings have the effect of scattering the mind in all directions. Bokavyape Bobid Tave sort of runs in different directions, is restless, is anxious. That's the state of our minds. And in the second section, it is a hint to the Satgur that the antidote to this is the Satgur. Satgur mera vadda samaratha. What happens when one goes to the Satgur? Chinta rog gayi hau pida, aap kare pritpala jiyo. So, chinta rog gayi, the affliction of worry and chronic disease. Because remember, haume dirag rog hai, daru bhi ismaye. Dirag rog, a chronic disease that carries within itself its own cure. So the affliction of worry is related to the chronic disease of haume. Chinta rog gayi. It leaves when aap kare pritpala jiyo, when the mind through Guru wisdom is now nurtured and protected by the self. And then the teachings of the true enlightener are wholesome and potent. In other words, they're all encompassing. Mera Satgur vad samaratha. Satgur mera vad samaratha. One who is big and capable, in other words, wholesome and potent. And when the being assimilates Guru wisdom, then all sorrows disappear. Ji samale ta sab dukh latha. Ji samale. Samale comes from samanta, in other words, becoming like the Guru. In other words, inculcating a wisdom within one's mind, that is Gurmat. And then here's the interesting thing. Here is an element of bhakti and devotion that Guruji spells out. And it is, Barak Vangi Hao Sab Kich Manga. Childlike, I ask for everything. So remember, this is the devotion that is childlike, intense. And if you have to ask again and again, I implore the self, Peri Pepe Bahut Manai. It's like a kid who's not going to go away. And then, of course, for us, the reassuring thing is that the self is merciful and generous. It's like a father, like a parent, who listens to the child. Deen Dayal Gopala Jiyo. And it does not hold back its gifts. Dende tot na aave. Dende tot nahi. Prab Ranga. Prab, of course, is the self. And here the attribute of the self as divine wisdom. Ranga is color, but also used for a chief, if you will, the head, Ranga. Either way, the meaning is that the Prabh self does not hold back its gifts. It gives very freely. And the passage concludes with hail and adoration to the perfect enlightener. How Balihari Satguru Pure. Balihar, often translated as sacrifice, simply means that you're submitting. Balihar, giving up your own strength, here signifying your own thought process for Gurmat, for wisdom. So how Balihari Satguru Pura. Hail to that perfect enlightener. I adore that perfect enlightener who freed me from bondage. Jin bandhan kate sagle mere. And how did that happen? It instilled in my heart the purifying self-knowledge. In other words, it wiped away my ignorance, and I came face to face with my authentic self. Hirde naam de nirmal kiye. It cleansed the windows of my perception. I was able to see clearly as to who I really was, or what my true nature is. And the fifth Nanak concludes by saying that the mind is now blissful with love of the self. Nanak Rangar Salajiyo. So the passage is celebrating the true enlightener, the Satgur. I mean, this is the central theme of Gurmat, which finds different, repeated articulation in Gurbani. And that is that beings are afflicted with a chronic disease called Haume, which we best translate as ego, although it might be closer to the truth to call it narcissistic behavior, narcissistic ego, totally self-absorbed, to which there is but one antidote, and the antidote is the Satgur. That is really the theme of Gurmat. So to be sure, Haume is not to be confused with some kind of original sin a la Christianity, but more in the nature of a blind spot. It prevents us from seeing our true selves. For those of you who are interested in a fuller treatment of Haume and Satgur as concepts, please visit our glossary section at www.khojgurbani.org. Now, in this passage, Haume is associated with sorrow, dukh, hunger, bhukh, disease, rog, pain, pida, and worry, chinta. These afflictions are rooted in the prevarication of the mind. And that prevarication is itself embedded in a fabricated Haume. It is Haume that distorts reality for us. It traps the mind in the world of opposites, attachments and aversions, duja pao, dvait. And it fuels an endless grasping and desire in us. It just does not cease. And above all, Haume is terrified of death. The fear of death hangs over it like the sword of Damocles. And so, in sum, haume is the root of our existential angst. And the antidote, the medicine for this, the Satgur. And among other things, we should understand the Satgur as being the principle of wisdom. The wisdom that is woven into our beings. It's innate to us. And it is this wisdom that brings about a paradigm shift in us. And the shift is that it is able to see through haume's forgery, haume's fabrication. You really understand your authentic nature. And that enables you to live a life more fully, that is more satisfying, that is creative, that is productive, and that is committed and devoted to the service of humankind. Very important to remember that. This is not some self-absorbing exercise where you reach a certain stage and then have no social or political responsibility. Not at all. As a matter of fact, you have to prepare yourself for jumping into the arena, but from the perspective and with the compass of Gurmat. With those thoughts, until the next time, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.